Hello everyone and welcome to Cause and Effect, a show about Vetus. My name is Anders Löv and these are my co-hosts Adam Jespersson and Isak Jespersson Bjärmark. Today we're going to talk about Stickmen, the deck, pros and cons and how to play and such. And then we're going to present this week's combo. That's I think is very interesting. It's a breeding card that's going to be really cool. And we're going to talk about our challenge for this week. But first, how are you and how have your Vetus week been, Isak?
I'm fine. I'm finally getting over my cold, and my Vetus week have been very rapey, Kevin dementia, and Spirit Marionette. So I've been stealing other guys' vampires, unfortunately with success. I will probably continue to doing that the upcoming week. But it's been great fun. I actually won too many games with those kinds of deck for it to be healthy for my ego.
Okay. Adam, how are you and how have your week been?
Okay. Yes, I'm actually starting to get a bit sick. I'm feeling in my throat. So maybe I caught whatever Isaac caught. I don't know. And my Vetus week has been fun. I'm reinventing archetype liquidation. My playgroup loves me. I'm optimizing a few master card decks, and my last Wednesday of Casual games was good for me, but for the playgroup, my ego, all that, whatever I should say.
Okay, so you both have won a lot of games. I have contested Anson, of course, and got my prey to sweep a table, and I got to sweep a table as well. So I got like a zero. I'm getting, I don't know what it's called, but okay.
Highs and lows. So
yeah, highs and lows, of course. Yeah. Whatever. Moving on then. Today we're going to talk about Stickmen, as I mentioned earlier. And if we could have the deck list, please.
Yes.
This is a deck by Hugh Angsing, and it's won the North American National Championship Day 1, 2009. Okay, any first reactions, Adam?
Yeah, I'm sure it's a deck most of us have seen, but I can talk about my first, the first time I saw this was a friend of mine, Michael Holmström, was living and competing in England, and he actually copied a deck from Hugh, from what I understand, and I played it before I actually saw it. And the feeling I got from it was that it's a really you sit back and just wait for your deck to get you the opportunity to win the game. You just kind of wait a lot. You sit back, play your reaction cards as you get them, and whenever you get the chance, you use your fortitude combat with disciplineless combat cards. That's my impression of the deck, and I don't know if it's exactly this one. I'm actually quite sure it's not this one exactly, but I think it's fair enough. It's more or less the same.
Isak, do you have any first impressions or thoughts about the deck?
I'm opposed to toolboxy decks. I don't agree with them. I don't agree with them. I play them. I don't agree with them when I build the library and such. But I have come to a point where I have to accept that this deck is good. Like, it performs well, it wins lots of tournaments, and especially Hugh had a lot of success with it, and a lot of people have been imitating his style of deck building and using it successfully. And just a few weeks ago during the Swedish National Championships, of course, Daniel had one of these kinds of decks in the finals, so they are a force to be reckoned with. They should not be trifled with. But it's a very defensive deck, and as far as defensive goes, I think this is a very good defensive deck.
This is a kind of a archetype, general way to build a deck, I believe. I think we're going to start about talking about the crypt. Isak, do you have thoughts on the crypt?
When you talk about this deck, you can't avoid talking about Owain Evans, Black Horse Tanner. Those vampires are great. They're cheap, 7 and 8 caps, or at least that's cheap for superior in clan, and both of them have special abilities that's really, really good.
Adam, could you take them up, please?
Yes, I can take them up.
So, and all their friends and sidekicks are also very, very strong. Joseph O'Grady, Jefferson Foster, Jeff Hester, they have 2 out of the 3 in clans and superior, and the other one inferior. Yeah, these are the ones. So the replace cards. If you're a bit lucky and you play well, Black Horse Tanner's special ability can be more or less like a Heart of Nichidus.
Yeah,
stronger even, I think.
Yeah.
Because of how you don't draw the 3 cards at the same time. You actually draw. So more or less, you want to use them once at your turn, once on your prey's turn, and once on your predator's turn. And even then, you might get to use it on your ground predator's turn, depending on how much deflection there are around the table. And the reason, well, when you get to use it 3 times each round, but you get to use it at 3 different points in the round, I think it gets stronger than Heart of Nichidus in a way, because if you see the 3 cards, you need to decide which of the 3 cards you get to use immediately. It kind of you need to try to predict what's going to happen a lot longer than
Black Horse Tanner's special ability is really good. And I myself believe that in a deck like this, where you have both reactions and actions, and you have a lot of things going on, because it's a toolbox, you need like a really good hand. And how do you think, like, would this deck be playable without Black Horse Tanner?
Obviously it is, because Hugh only plays 2, and I don't think I've seen very many decks play more than 2. Maybe a few decks play 3 of him, and 3 of him is only a 74 point something % chance to draw him in just the first 4. Yeah. So it is playable. But on the other hand, that could be like the one round during the preliminaries where you lose, where you don't pick him. I don't have the statistic of that because I haven't played that deck in tournaments at all.
Yeah.
But I think it's key that you can modify your hand so that it fits the situation, because that's one of the biggest problems, in my opinion, with playing a toolbox. That at least I end up having like a bleed hand when I need to block, or a combat hand when I need to bleed. All the 3 parts always gets wrong for me, and that's why I don't really agree with toolbox.
Adam, what were your thoughts about toolbox and this hand situation?
I think there are ways to remedy the fact that, just as Isaac says, it's the biggest thing about the toolbox is that you have different cards, and you will need some cards in some situations, other cards in other situations. Black Horse Tanner is an obvious way. Heart of Nichidus is an obvious way. Dreams of the Saints is an obvious way. And also, when you play a deck, I think the biggest thing that you learn from a deck is which cards you should play when, and which cards are unnecessary in which situation. So if you get used to the deck, I think you'll be able to optimize your hand, depending on how you predict the game is going to play out, a lot better.
Okay.
That's kind of my experience, and yeah.
Okay, and what about Owain Evans' special ability? You mentioned it, Isaac. What does it do, and how does it affect the game?
You get a blood, or you can give a blood to a vampire in each Methosaurus untap phase, so you can give basically it's a hunting ground that can be a hunting ground for other people too. But like, he's an 8 cap, and has 3 superior in clan, and has 2 disciplines on inferior, so that's more or less a special ability that's for free, and that could yield probably between 8 and 11 blood during a game. And gaining between 8 and 11 blood during a game of Vitas is a lot. It's what you get from playing a giant's blood if you're lucky.
Also, in a way, it makes him free eventually, because of how a blood is more or less equivalent to a pool. So, well, not really free, but well, you get what I mean. You get resources for free from him for no additional cost, really.
And of course, you get the goodwill and it's really good to be able to hand out blood to other players as well, and deny them blood, of course. I think we can go back to the deck list, and of course we have the govern down the line the ladder that you can put down from Owen Evans to everyone else and downwards. Of course, it's good.
Can I say something about Chris?
Yeah.
I've one really interesting vampire is the inclusion of Louise de Maisonneuve, or however your French is. It's really interesting to me that I choose to include this vampire because of Auspex and Dominate, or I don't know how to say this in another way, but Auspex and Dominate are the better disciplines from Fortitude, and still chooses to include a Fortitude, and I think this reflects how the deck is played a lot. That you are bleeding and expecting to be blocked, and using your Fortitude combat a lot. In this iteration of the deck, the huge iteration of the deck, he plays a lot for the combat part of it.
Yeah. I thought we were going to talk about, let's talk about Masters first, and then we'll go over to the combat side of the deck. Any thoughts about the combat? Any thoughts about the Masters, Adam?
Yeah. It includes some of the most standard Masters. Of course, you need to include Pentix and Misdirection to be able to oust. Anarchub Makers among those as well. Dreams for just be able to have deck flow as you want it to flow, of course, as I said earlier. So these cards, I would say, are a given. He chooses to include Vessels and Bloodals, and this is, of course, for his defensive long-term kind of play. Plays it, might even stay untapped a lot of turns, even if he doesn't exactly actually need it. He might stay untapped, and they might hunt once or twice to get a few pullback. So that's just a play side thing, I think.
Okay. Isaac, I see there's a lot of intercept Masters. How do you feel about them?
Another thing I usually don't agree to is intercept locations, but when you have them on the table, they're really, really strong, extremely strong. Especially out of these three, I do agree most with Channel 10 because it's tapping one location for 2 intercept, and the drawback of not being usable on the first action. I think you can circumvent that with some sort of bounce on the first. Say it's a bleed. So, but why I don't agree with them is that usually I end up with a lot of Masters. Having 14 Masters in a deck is a lot. I think it's actually, especially considering this is a toolbox. I think there's a lot to play with that. And it's the pool cost of them. Okay, maybe it's not much, it's 1 or 2 pool, but that's an investment. And if you aim to get at least 2 out of 3 intercept locations in play, that is one Ulrike Rothbart or Lana Butcher. So choosing between an additional Weenie with Dominate and 2 intercept locations.
I think one of the reasons the Vessels and the Bloodals are there to pay for the intercept locations. I'm imagining that's one of the reasons they're there, so that you can still turn out this Cap 3 vampire, and you can put a Blood Doll on it, and it will eventually pay for itself. And the intercept locations, they just cost master card slots, but it costs a lot of master card slots, of course. Because there's 3 intercept locations, and there's 4 Blood Oath Vessels. So that's 7 master card slots. But I think that the idea is that you shouldn't affect the number of minions you have, it should only affect the number of masters you have in the deck.
Okay. Is it necessary with these many intercept locations when you have a lot of reaction intercept as well? Or is it just...
That's a meta choice, in my opinion.
Okay.
Like, if I expect to meet Obfuscate combined with some sort of voting power, then I think they are really, really strong. I think they are at their best then. Because if you meet any kind of bleed, I'd rather put a bounce in. I think that helps. Because how bounce works, and especially in these kinds of decks that only rely on the so-called European stealth master module, like the Anna Troublemaker, the Misdirection, and the Pentex, having a bounce, not only the biggest part is that you make your prey have to deal with another bleed. So each bounce you get to play your auto turn ends up being like an additional minion you control that bleeds your prey. So if you manage to bounce 2-3 bleeds from your predator or ground predator, and then you end up bleeding with 4 different minions, then in one turn your prey have to deal with 7 bleeds.
Yeah, that's one of the strongest points of this deck, I believe, because you have both intercept and bouncing with the Auspex, and you have deflections. What do you feel about that, Adam?
I think that you actually play the deck differently if you have intercept locations out, in a way, because of... I don't think the question, are the intercept locations really needed? It's not the right way to phrase it. I think the best way to phrase it is, what do you do with them when they're out? And I think that he will block a lot more aggressively. In this way, it functions a bit like an Auspex weenie, in the way that you actually block your prey and try to tear him down as well as your predator.
Okay.
I'm imagining this is how it works. I have played 2 games against him with this deck only, so I'm not too sure. Sorry, this is just thoughts in my head. You were talking about the reaction cards. Of course, it's really, really important to deflect to be able to out. I think that's how this deck wins. Deflect, even if you deflect for 1 or 2, if he has 14 deflections, I think 14 bounces. No, 12.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of bounces anyway. So even if you do 1 or 2 bleed bounces, eventually you're gonna tear your prey down. So
actually 15 bounces? No?
I'm counting 12.
Okay, no, 12.
9-2-1.
Yeah, 9-2-1.
That is actually an interesting point, that he opts to go for so many deflections compared to the telepathic misdirections. Yeah,
but don't you think that's because of how he wants to only deflect his predator and he wants to block his prey more? He tries to use enhanced senses and the intercept locations on the prey and try to hit him with the sticks and then just deflect predator. More or less leave his predator alive and well, just as long as he can deflect it.
Yeah, that's probably very important.
Okay, let's talk about the combat bit and how you really oust with the deck. Well, you said something earlier, Adam, about tearing your prey apart. Please explain what you meant.
The combat is, of course, you get sticks out and try to use... Joseph O'Grady and sticks is your main combat module, and then you just play these hidden strength and indomitability to press and just hit for 1 and 2 each round. And this combat will, in the beginning, not be very strong, but eventually these 1 and 2 bloods adds up. And if you manage to get your prey, like he has to hunt 1 turn or has to rescue from torpor 1 turn, it might inflict action damage, I want to call it. Your prey will want to do some specific actions, and he will have to cut back on other actions, possibly defensive actions. And if your prey starts cutting back on defensive actions, or staying untapped would be a defensive action, it's a lot easier to oust him. So you try to inflict this action damage to your prey. I think it's the main idea.
Okay.
Or predator, I guess, if you end up with a more aggressive predator that you don't have enough bounce to deal with.
What do you think about the combat pack that is packing? How will it work against other combat effects?
This combat package ends up being very efficient as long as you don't meet someone who's very combat dedicated. You will have a problem against any sort of guns deck because you don't have any maneuvers. You only have an ivory bow to deal with ranged combat. But you will have an advantage when it comes to potence. You will probably be able to prevent one of the damage the potence deck do, and then use the press to make him not be able to press with his mortal grapple. You probably the potence deck will probably only rely on one press, and the same goes for animalism. Cairn Crows, 8 from bats. You will probably take the 2 damage from the Cairn Crows, but with your press in the indomitability or hidden strength, you can press against his 8 from bats.
I think what's important against potence is that the prevent, and especially hidden strength, prohibits or decreases the efficiency of pace of vitae, which is really important for potence combat. So even if you might lose the battle, you're still winning the war because this potence deck won't be able to function without pace of vitae.
Yeah, because you can use hidden strength and you can burn X blood. Yeah, so you can burn all the blood, and he gets no you lose no blood to damage. That way you can only place taste for 0 blood.
Okay. But something that really surprises me is no Sipgun and no target vitals. I don't think the White Walker stick is that important or that strong that you need it on every single minion, every combat. I think it's a nice addition when you're actually doing combat, of course, but having that surprise amount of damage, do 3 ones, or with a White Walker stick it's even 4. And as well as the ship guns, of course, are really strong against animalism combat, which animalism combat is also kind of blood gain module, but the blood gain module on animalism is that you don't actually lose any blood from animalism combat. If you can just inflict 1 damage every now and then, it's really strong against animalism. So I'm really surprised actually that there aren't any ship guns or target vitals in this deck.
Okay, well, moving on. What are the main strengths then of this deck?
It's actually more or less untouchable. You cannot kill this deck. Especially the situation with 27 reaction cards and 18 combat cards, it's incredibly defensive. I'm imagining that, not even imagining, I think I might even be remembering that Hugh said that he's never been ousted with this deck. Something like that. Which is a strength when it's a strength, if that makes any sense. But it could be a weakness in the way that, of course, the reaction cards and the combat cards will take away from your bleed amount. But yeah, it's incredibly defensive. If you just stay in the game and you play fast enough, I think you'll be able to win any kind of game.
Isak, do you have any notes on what Adam just said?
I think he nailed it, actually.
Okay.
And it's incredibly defensive, and if it's also the thing is you need to play it well. You need to play this deck or this kind of deck a lot, I think, to be able to understand it. In what pace do I draw reaction cards? When can I expect to draw new reaction cards? Knowing the deck and the card flow, knowing what to discard and when to discard it. I think since this is a toolbox, you have to anticipate other people's play and discard accordingly. For dreams, for instance, or use Black Cortana special and really have an insight to where the game is going and what the different decks on the table are doing. So you need to have a big understanding of Vitus as a game. It's hard to just go with your own thing and keep doing that very stubbornly, bullheaded or whatever.
Yeah, of course. And I think we're missing a crucial point as well. It can block a lot, and it has government conditioning. Just wait, and then it can choose to oust when it's able to, because of it's 10 governed down the line, 6 conditioning. It's a big bleed packet as well.
Yeah. I think this combination of strength is only actually realizable, if that's even a word, with this combination of disciplines. Auspex Dominate Fortitude is the only discipline combination that can hope to achieve this, like this perfect defense together with the ability to bleed for 6.
If any of our listeners or watchers want to prove Adam wrong, you can just post on our Facebook or send a mail. Anyway, okay, weaknesses. Isak, you were talking a lot about it's a toolbox deck. What is the main big weakness?
And this is toolbox decks in general. You tend to end up in situations where no matter your matchup, you're the worst deck. An Auspex Wien is better at defending than this, probably. Some deck with second tradition obedience, for instance, is better against combat decks. Some power bleed girls will find inner peace, or geezers will find inner peace, or like your La Sombra dominate nocturne deck is a better bleed deck than this. So you end up with a little of everything. It's like that's the idea of the toolbox, that you have something for every situation, and that can be a real drawback. Because with good play and good knowledge of the deck and good knowledge of beaters in general, you can compensate for that by knowing what to discard and how to table talk and when to push and when not to push, and when to stay with your guys untapped and when to bleed, etc., etc. But I think you can have a real problem with a really high-level finals, and that's the impressive part with Hugh, actually managing to win the NAC day one with this deck. Yeah. Because I've seen it in a lot of finals, but in the finals you need to win to win.
In the finals you need to win to win. That's a quote, good folks. Adam, what do you think about it?
Weaknesses? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's as like says, with the toolbox deck, it has some kind of weaknesses, and how you play a toolbox deck, how to make the toolbox deck do what it does, you include as many reaction cards as you need to survive. I think that's the rule of thumb. You need reaction cards to survive with a toolbox deck, because you won't be like bleeding faster than Kindred Spirits deck, and you won't be, well, whatever. You're not doing combat as well as a Potence Rush. You need the reaction cards to stay alive, and this deck includes so many reaction cards. I feel like it inhibits its ability to do anything else than being defensively. So if you can't deflect, and if you don't draw Black Horse Tanner, and this iteration does not even have a Heart of Nicitus, you will be stuck with your hand, and you won't be able to play the deck as it's meant to be played. You're really leaving it up to your Predator to do anything. You need your Predator to do something specifically for your deck to function. And
you need your Predator to bleed, or
yeah, exactly, or deflect, or well, more. I think the general idea, what I'm trying to get at here, is you're relying on other people to do something to make your deck function. And that is a weakness, or like a real big one.
Yeah, that's like the logical drawback with playing with any sort of counter, be it Scourge of the Occurrence or be it a reactive deck or something like that. But I think we need to talk a bit about the key the key to making this very beautiful toolbox work, and I think it's actually governed on the line.
Yeah, of course. Take it away, Isak.
What is this card?
The key point.
Adam, you can show governed on the line as well.
Yeah, I think you should. The key point is that it's two different things. One inferior, and that's the bleed. As you all know, the bleed for +2 with 1 blood. That is very, very blood bleed efficient. One of the best in the games. Inferior, etc. So if you have a lot in hand, it's very easy to remove them just by bleeding. And bleeding is the main way to oust. So that makes all sense. But it's the superior that makes the deck go round, in my opinion. So you get one of the big guys up, like Owain Evans or Black Horse Tanner, and that guy do govern superior on the next guy, So if Owain Edmund does Governor Superior, no matter who he does it on, that guy will only need 4 more pool to enter play. And that guy enter plays. And the next turn you have 2 guys with Superior Dominate, ideally, and both of them play a Governor on a line each, and you get your 3rd minion for free. So you get 3 minions for 12 pool. Like Owain Edmund's 8 pool, the second guy is only 4 pool, and the 3rd guy is for free. And then you maybe get a 4th or 5th, and ideally you also get them for free, right? Because of the Governor Superior. And then you have between 3 and 5 minions, then you have the action, the capacity to block and the capacity to oust.
Of course. So what we're talking about here to really damage this deck when you're playing against it is to somehow try to block or otherwise make it so it can't do the first Governor on the line on Superior.
It's a snowball kind of effect, really, because of how the additional minions, or the faster you get your minions out, makes you be able to play more goblins. And as Isaac points out, it's an extremely efficient card. You get a lot of resources from it. And this translates into more actions, which means you can play more goblins. And eventually, when you have 5 guys out, that's when the deck starts getting really scary. And if you can delay that, I think you could delay it by 2 turns if you block the first govern. And 2 turns is a lot in betas. So I would absolutely agree.
So if you say this deck has any key actions, is the first of the Governor on the lines then?
The first and the second. Okay. And because that is one of the other drawbacks with the deck is time. So you probably will survive those 2 first blocks, and you might even get down to the 3-player game. Or maybe even the 2-player game, but you will be like 1 or 2 turns behind compared where your ideal would be. And then a toolbox that is so-so in every area gets even more so-so. So going down to 3-player game with maybe only 2 minions, best case 3 minions if you got your first 1 or 2 governors blocked. That is a very scary situation for this deck.
I actually thought of something just now that just occurred to me. This only goes for the Chaos EG News Radio. I should perhaps take this again. The Chaos EG News Radio, together with Owain Evans, makes you have at least a limited choice in who you want to pick the duel or the 3-player game with, or the heads up or the 3-player situation with. And that might actually be really key with this deck.
What are you talking about? You need to explain this more.
Yeah, giving blood to players is, or could be, extremely powerful. And depending on who you give it to, it might actually cause one player to get a victory point, or one player to oust it, or stay alive, or remain untapped and be able to deflect, or whatever. It might have a really strong effect on the game, and especially if you do it predicted early enough, they can start doing it early enough that 3 or 4 blood might be able to tip this balance, and you might be able to get a 3-player situation that you win easily, just simply by the nature of your deck.
And the station?
The station is, of course, you can tap it to get, and the pool to give anyone +1 intercept.
So you can...
You can help your buddies out to get the best possible 3-way game that you want.
Yeah, of course.
And this goes back to when I said that you need a predator, a specific kind of predator. And you might be able to choose to get that kind of predator in the 3-player situation with these abilities.
This situation, of course, demands a really big understanding of the game to be able to decide who to help and who not to help.
Yeah. Yes. I don't think this is like a good gateway deck, if we call it, to the tournament scene. I think this is like the senior years of your education, Peter's education.
Okay. I thought we were going to look at another variation of this deck. If we could take that one up, please, Adam.
Actually, it was the one that was up the first few seconds of the cost. So here it is.
Okay.
No. There it is. Yes, there we are.
Okay, and this one is played by Daniel Teige. And Isaac, can you tell us a little bit about this deck?
Yeah, at first glance we see this is only 22 reaction cards compared to 27, I think it was, and 16 combat cards compared to 18. This deck have, at least it has got additional Daring Dawns. I even think it has more bondings. At least, yeah, 2 more bondings, and then we've got 2 more Govern the Unaligned.
Okay, so it's a lot more bleed, a lot more oust.
Yes, and then you see the equipments, and there is no Ivory Bone, they're Heart and Nichetus instead. You see the combat. Yeah, and there's a few were masters. You reduced 1/3, almost 1/3 of the masters, like 14 in Hugh Angsys's version of the deck, and it's down to 9 in this Daniel Teges deck.
Okay.
One really funny thing is to note the Coven in Daniel's deck. Seeing how, what I touched upon earlier is that the Hugh's deck probably relies a lot on using combat to wear down your prey, and the Coven counteracts this, of course. And Daniel's deck obviously relies a lot on using blood yourself, otherwise you wouldn't include the Coven and Jake. So it's really like, it's shifting the, there's a really good word for this. I forgot it, I almost had it. Okay, never mind. It's really like different kind of take on how to play the deck.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's still the same like main motors in the deck, but you play it a lot different. How would you explain it, Adam?
The early game is the same. You try to govern as much as you can, get as many minions as you can, of course. But I think that when Hugh tries to get a good situation and get his intercept locations and the blood dolls out and have lots of blood on his vampires and try to affect the game in a way that he gets a 3-play situation he likes, I think that when Hugh starts doing that, Daniel just starts bleeding. He just tries to get his prey out, like just govern bonding, and any kind of resistance is met. You just use the combat cards as you draw them. I imagine that's just how it's played. And also there's a big shift in how the intercept locations are not in the master deck, the master module, but they are the bounces of the deck. I think there were 3 by enemy's enemy with telepathic misdirection in Hugh's deck, and there are 8 in Daniel's deck, which means he has a lot more transient intercept.
Okay. Yes, and that's you might see a bit of metagame choices here. Seeing these setups, deflection gets worse the more European styles you meet, like the misdirection and the Anna Troublemaker. So if Daniel expects to get a lot more misdirection and a Troublemaker on him, every bounce need to have a wake with them. And if you need to wake and play a bounce for every bleed that you want to bounce, then deflection gets kind of crappy, really, because then you don't get the advantage that you stay untapped. Yeah. So I think that might be a choice. Hugh's deck were played in a meta that were probably a lot less tapping going on, like the European stealth, the so-called. Coined by Matt Morgan, probably should plug him.
Okay. You see, as well as in his comeback pack, he's packing Sip Guns and Taste of Vitae. You talked about the positive effects of these cards earlier, Adam.
Yeah, I don't know. It gives you more options combat-wise. It can have really kill a guns deck or an animalism deck to have some ranged combat and be able to do more damage than just 2 at a time. And also, they're really easy to cycle. Weighted Walking Stick, you can only have 1 per minion. And Ship Gun, Weighted Walking Stick, and Target Vitals, all 3 of these cards you can be played in the same combat if you, like, say your prey is playing a Majesty deck. The combat cards are worth nothing, you just need to play them, drop the bleed cards, or however you want to reason. then you can it's more easy to cycle these cards. So I think that might also affect the choices of this combat package.
How many cards is there in this deck, Isaac?
This is a 75 card deck compared to Hugh Angsi's deck. That's an 82 card deck. So Daniel has opted to remove 7 cards, and I can only agree with him. Here you can start to elaborate a bit. I'm like a pro the slim deck play. Like 75 to 80 cards is really the top, not 90. But anyways, I should get to the point. You could argue that Hugh's deck is more combat focused and more block focused. Therefore, he will probably use more cards per turn or per round around the table than Daniel. Because Daniel won't be acting as much out of turn. He'll be or acting like playing cards out of turn. He'll be playing more cards during his turn. Another point that we didn't mention concerning the intercept locations is that since Daniel don't play the intercept locations, he really don't have any viable way of dealing with stealth voters. And that's probably why we see 2 delaying tactics.
That is
to compensate for that. Did you play delaying tactics?
Yes, he has to.
I'm sorry. I take it all back.
But it has to be said, I think, that it's a glaring weakness of the deck to block stealth voters.
Yeah. So is that like the main, if you sit down on a table with this deck and you see your predator taking up loots or something like that, then you know you're out? Or
I wouldn't say out immediately, but I would on the other hand say that that's the only kind of deck that can reliably oust a Stickmen deck, a stealth-voter.
Okay. Do you agree, Isaac?
Nope.
Okay. You need to explain yourself.
I think that is the best deck to kill this. If you play Lutz von Hohenzollern and you play some sidekicks with presence and preferably obfuscate, and you really well, that's probably the biggest weakness this deck has.
Yeah.
Maybe there's something else, but that feels like the biggest weakness. But you could have a problem with over specialized decks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Like a deck, like a La Sombra Nocturne deck, it might end up being problematic for this deck to deal with, because it's too much bleed, too much stealth with too many guys.
Yeah, and if you combine this with a prey that has above average defensive capabilities, you won't be able to compete with the La Sombra deck for bleed amount, because that's more or less what you're doing. You're trying to bleed faster than your predator. And if your prey is defensive, you might not be able to compete with the La Sombra deck instead.
Yeah. Okay. I shouldn't go into which deck is better. I believe it's a meta situation, of course. But which would you prefer to play, Adam?
I would prefer to play the more bleed-heavy Daniel Vegas deck. And I can qualify this by something I said about Hugh's deck earlier, is that with Hugh's deck you rely a lot on your predator to defect or bleed, and Daniel's deck is more active. It's less dependent on your predator, and I like that in a deck.
Isaac, how do you feel?
I tend to agree. As I said earlier, I don't really agree with the intercept locations. I don't agree with playing like an Ivory Bow. You don't play any Daring the Dawns. I don't agree with that. I'd prefer to play Sipgun. So this reasoning end up with me building a deck that is kind of similar to Daniel Teges, but I wouldn't play like this. Exactly like this. I like playing the more table control thing that Hugh has going. But Hugh opts to go for the Ivory Bow above Heart of Nichitas. That doesn't make any sense for me. If you're able to play Heart of Nichitas in a deck, especially a toolbox deck, then you should. There's actually no reason not to.
Yeah, and
there's no reason not to play There in the Dawn. For me, that is like the nail in the coffin. You need that to be able to win some situations. It's undoable without There in the Dawn.
Okay. Are there any other variations of this deck that's notable, Adam?
Yes. We have a recent surge of decks that use Lodin, Olaf of Holte, or however his name is. I'll bring him up. As the Cap 8 Vampire. And using second traditions for defensive purposes, and just instead of Auspex you have seconds and you're using parachute. And that's really strong as well, I think. And it's kind of akin actually to with Lodin to the Owen Evans, because of how Lodin's special is one prevent each combat. It saves you a lot of blood, I think. And
Parrot Shift is kind of broken.
Kind of broken, yeah. It's kind of broken.
And I don't want to get any viewers upset. It's not broken as it's banned. I think it's great. Keep it. I love the Parrot Shift, but it's incredibly strong to be able to play a deck with Parrot Shift.
Yeah.
It's ridiculously strong, actually.
Okay, so are there any more advantages to this deck? Which of this deck would you say would hold up best?
You need to keep in mind that you probably won't be able to get the Lodin Group 4-5 Ventrue Crypt as defensive as Stickmen Crypt, because you don't have Auspex in that way.
I'm also of the opinion that the Ventrue Crypt is a lot weaker. You don't get as good homogeneity with which distance they have. It's really each one of them have a different superior discipline. You don't get the Black Horse Tanner with this crypt.
You don't get his special ability.
No, that's also a problem.
Yeah,
but it's,
sorry, go ahead.
One interesting point is that you get lots of votes, and this is a defensive capability, primarily. Parrot Shift is defensive primarily, in my opinion, and the votes are also defensive in the way that you can vote against a stealth voter, and that's it's great.
Should probably plug two names here. Thiago Brum have played several times and managed to win a tournament in Portugal with this kind of gentleman with stick deck, and during the Swedish Nationals, of course, plug that too, Henrik Klippström played a deck with this basic crypt and this basic idea. He hasn't disclosed his deck content yet, but anyways.
Okay.
One more thing. I think there's a big problem with the deck with the Lodin of Holte is how second costs a blood. Every single time you want to block someone, it costs a blood. Oh, well, more or less, if you're not untapped, but you don't want to be untapped. So, I think that's a big drawback of the deck, and it has to be, you need to think about that if you choose to play with Lodin instead of Owen Evans.
Yeah, you will have a bigger issue with blood management. You maybe could compensate that with playing the Coven, Jake Washington, Lilith's Blessing, maybe even Life in the City.
Okay. Are there any more notable variations?
You could argue that every deck that contains weighted walking stick, target vitals combo is a version of the Stickmen deck. In that case, then there's a lot with very different success. But
can I mention one of them just quickly? I had one that's my most played Corso games with Matthias, the Salubri. I'll bring him up, and he with the Owen Evans crypt and just Matthias and Spirit Marionette, and it has really good synergy because of how Spirit Marionette is a tap lead card and Heidelberg gets you lots of blood, and it's fun.
I actually think that Hugh himself made a gentleman with sticks in disguise with a Salubri and Harbinger of Skulls crypt that's in the TWDH.
H, but isn't that
HA?
I'm thinking about I think it won an Icelandic tournament with a Surbrianti stick deck. Is that the one, or is it another one?
I'm not sure. This maybe it's getting very uninteresting. Anyways, there is a lot you can do with like the basic concept of the press prevent cards plus stick plus target vitals. Yeah. That basic idea you can play around with a lot, I think.
Okay, well, I think we have it covered then. Any last thoughts or words on the deck or the archetype, Adam?
No, it's a really good deck. Requires lots of skills. Lots of skill to play, and yeah, I think it's actually a tier 1 deck.
Okay, Isaac?
I think Adam is exaggerating. I don't think this is tier 1, I think this is tier 1.5 because of the inherent problem with the toolbox that you're a jack of all trades and master of none. So when you end up in a really, really sleazy final table, you might lose because you don't have anything to bring to the table. Just you're the worst block deck, you're the worst combat deck, and you're the worst lead deck.
Okay. Well, yeah, good. Well, then we're moving on to this week's combo. We are going to talk about Lilith's Blessing and Becoming. You could put these two cards out, Adam?
I actually remember that I can't put up Lilith's Blessing.
Okay.
Because I don't have it in the deck builder. I'm sorry.
You should be playing with Anarch Revolt deck builder, not Fragment of Eldebe.
I can fix this real quick, but we can start talking about it in the meantime.
Yeah, you can start talking about Becoming. Isaac, what do you think of just the card Becoming then?
When Keepers of Traditions first was released, I got excited about a lot of things. And some things we've seen with like where we are now, we can see that they actually were really good, like the Asher Tablets and the Bill Lane. But I got really excited with the Becoming. I thought that there were something with that card that could make it work. So I built like Dementation Weenie based on the Camel-Seni deck, then won like a Swiss ECQ a few years back. He played it with the breed card for the Sabbat.
Creation Rights?
Creation Rights, exactly. He played with that. So I built a different version where I didn't have to rely on like the 4 Captain Archbishop for Beatse Contreras. I could rely on any vampire. So you get the Becoming and you get your skill cards with Dementation, and then you just Dementation, Bleed, and Breed. And I got really excited about that. But it ended up being a hassle, really, to get Becoming. Because it requires you to have at least 1 discipline card in your hand, and it costs you blood, and you can't hunt or act the first time it comes into play. So it's very circumstantial, we should call it. There's a lot of things that needs to be right for you to be able to play it. Okay. But I think that is if you want to build a bleed deck where you actually give your new vampires discipline cards, I do think that Becoming is a good way to go.
Becoming is, my opinion is that Becoming is only strong if you stick to 1 discipline. So you need a bleed discipline that works on its own.
Okay, and then of course we're talking about Dementation.
Dementation is the first kind of deck, Becoming deck I built, yes. But you could also do it with Presence, I think, and it could be really successful. I haven't tried that though. It's an interesting idea. Could possibly be played with Dominate, but I think that will be strictly inferior to Presence. But there are other weenie kind of decks that actually could work. I would be interested to look into weenie Animalism as well as weenie Auspex with Becoming. Simply because of how many minions you actually get. It's a really, really strong... Because this card actually can be played by any vampire. It doesn't require capacity or doesn't require a title, and that could be easily overlooked at first, but I think that's really strong with the card, that it can be played by small vampires, because you can so easily, if you turn up your entire crypt, first uncontrolled region, you have 4 vampires, and they each play 1 becoming, you have 8 vampires. It's actually really incredible what happens when you get that many minions. But
still, you would need a lot of situation-based card to be able to play it. It's a lot of this that has a drawback as well.
Yes, it does a lot to your deck, I think. You can easily hand flip. But I think that's where Lilith Blessing comes in. It makes it so that you can actually play one discipline, like the inferior level of whichever it is.
Do we have Lilith Blessing up yet?
Yes, they're both up.
Sorry, my screen is a little bit laggy. Okay, explain what's going on here then, Adam.
Yeah, so you get the becoming with any vampire. You put 1 discipline card on it and 0 blood, and in the next turn you can use Lilith Blessing on it to fetch a superior or next level and give it 3 blood or 2 blood. It will become, because it's only a cap 2 vampire. And with this combination, I think the deck becomes a lot better. Rather than include like 6 becoming and 12 Master Discipline cards, you can include 6 becoming and 7 Master Discipline cards, and you're really good to go. Just with Lilith Blessing, which is a really good card anyway, because of how much blood it can give you through a game.
How many Lilith Blessing would you play in that deck?
Maybe 4 Lilith Blessing in a 75 card deck, around that.
Yeah, because one of the other drawbacks with becoming is, I would never agree that it is a tier 1 card, but it's decent enough. Tier 1.5, the infamous tier 1.5. But one of the drawbacks is 2 blood is a big cost, and especially since with Adam's reasoning, and I agree with that reasoning, is that you want to play this with mid cap to low caps, and if you pay 2 blood with especially a low cap, but even with a mid cap, then you don't have a lot of blood left. And if you also want to move blood from the sire to the child, then there's like a 4 cap, paying 2 blood for becoming, he has 2 blood left, he gives 1 to the becoming, keeps 1 himself. That's 1 blood each, and you haven't even, only like 15 to 20 minutes of the game has gone by. So I think you actually need the Lilith Blessing, not only because you get like the Master Discipline cards, but you get the 3 blood. And in a Winnie to mid-cap deck, gaining 3 blood per minion, once each turn, of course, because it costs the Master Phase action, is incredibly strong.
Well, when Lilith Blessing came out, it really made Becoming more playable. Adam, didn't you play a Becoming deck in the Swedish Nationals?
Yes, I did. It was the Dementation kind of deck, Dementation Weenie with 7 becomings and 9 discipline cards in it, and I think it works really well. I think it's stronger than the regular Weenie Dementation deck.
How many Lilith Blessing did you have in that deck?
It's 4.
4, yeah. Okay, how did it go?
I got 3 victory points throughout the entire tournament, so it's a fine enough tournament for me. But yeah, one thing that's really interesting about the deck is that if you actually manage to not use Master Phase actions on the Dementation skill cards, and you only use it for Lilith Blessing every single turn, this is of course theoretically only possible, but if you use it for the Lilith Blessing special as much as you can, and then you only play Life in the City as the other master card, it becomes really blood efficient. The problem that Isaac brings up with how much blood it costs, like half the blood of your minions to play a Becoming, it's actually not that much of a problem because of Life in the City and Lilith Blessing.
You need to compensate that blood loss with Masters.
And it's actually quite funny that if you don't actually play any of the Dementation as a Master Phase action, you only use Lilith Blessing and the Becomings to get the Dementations out, and you play with like 4 Life in the City and 4 Lilith Blessing, that's really few Master Phase actions that you use during the Master Phase. So if you manage to play Becoming and Dementation as actions, the Master package gets small in a way, even though the actual number of Masters in the deck is high. you only use most phase actions for very few things. So played perfectly, I think you use most phase actions really efficiently in a becoming Lilith Blessing type deck.
Okay, so and you can use this as well with animalism, presence, and the other disciplines, not just the dementation.
Yes, the same reasoning goes for all of them.
Okay.
Yeah, but I haven't seen that in play, I think.
No.
Once I tried to like make a deck list with a bombe, the Libon discipline.
Yeah.
With these, because they have that discipline is, if you have superior, basically none of the cards costs any blood, and you have both stealth and bleed and like aggravated hand damage and such.
Wake and intercept.
Yes, so you get a versatile horde of a bomb weenies. I don't know if it's good, but the idea made me giggle. So, but it ended up me not having enough bomber cards, so I ditched the idea. But that could also be something to try out, because you don't want too blood intensive library like minion cards, I think, because blood will be an issue eventually.
Yeah, which actually makes me think that the animalism the animalism is better than the Osvex version, and I think presence will not be good enough because of how much blood presence costs.
Yeah. Okay, any last thought on this combination, Isak?
When you build a deck, don't get too disappointed, I think. But as Adam said, he actually had won a tournament with a becoming deck with Lilith's Blessing, so it's possible to win something with it. But you will feel uncomfortable playing this deck, because you will have so many discipline cards and so many becomings in your hand, and it can become frustrating at times. You have to get into the play style of that deck, because it differs so much from other decks.
Adam, what is key when playing a Lilith Blessing becoming deck?
Yeah, you need to be really aware and really optimize your card usage and discarding and stuff so that your minion cards actually don't clog. And get your vampires out fast and try to use your minion advantage, because that's more or less the only strength this combo has over any other card combo you might choose to include in your deck.
And of course, when you play Lilith's Blessing, and you can play other breed cards as well, like Second Tradition and those cards. How do you feel about that, Isak?
Other breed cards with Lilith's Blessing. I think that's good. Of course, if you play like the Bamba, Creation Rights, or Third Tradition Progeny, Embrace not so much, because you're forced to hunt, so you end up not being able to put your new vampire intentionally on Zero Blood. I'm a bit uncertain. They don't have to hunt for it first time they enter play, yeah?
No.
And that's the key point. You can leave them at Zero Blood and use your Lilith's Blessing to give them 3 blood. And with like the Third Tradition and Creation Rights, is even easier to play fewer of the discipline cards, because first you get to search, because of Creation Rights or Third Tradition Progeny's card text, and then you get to search through Lilith's Blessing's card text. So you will, as long as you have the Lilith's Blessing in play, you will can guarantee that you get a 3 cap with 1 discipline superior.
I actually think this is a kind of weak combination, because of how it's really counterproductive, the cards, how they work. Because of how Third Tradition, Creation Rights, and Bamba, all of them requires you to be titled. And if you have this many titled vampires in your crypt, you kind of want to use your vote for something, like kind resources contested. And this card does not require you to use disciplines. So in a way, it doesn't like fit together. It doesn't have this synergy that a becoming deck will have, because of how titled vampires encourage you to play vote cards that does not require discipline.
Yeah, that is true. That is counterintuitive in a way, but you could also like trace back to the Camel Senni deck that I talked about earlier. So you could play that deck with Pablisa Contreras and Creation Rights and play that with this blessing.
Lily Prelude.
That way. Come again?
Lily Prelude. It's a discipline vote card for the Melpomene, Daughter of Cacophony discipline.
Unfortunately, there's no discipline cards for Melpomene.
Right, yeah, I'm stupid, sorry.
Okay, well anyway, I think we all can agree that Lilith's Blessing really is a good addition when you're playing Greed, and how you look at it. And it's a good addition to almost any deck that needs blood.
Yes, that is a lot of different options, but this is the fun part because most people have used Lilith's Blessing for blood, at least in the tournament scene.
Yeah.
And this way you can also use like the blood and the discipline, so you got like the full advantage of the Lilith's Blessing.
Yeah.
One really important thing, if you choose to include Lilith's Blessing in your deck, is that I think you need to decrease the master package so much. Either that or you need to have 2 master phase actions, because it costs a master phase action each turn you want to use it, and if you want to use it every single turn, you can't play any other masters.
Okay, so maybe Animalism deck with featuring Nanabruku, which is big.
Could be strong.
Yeah, if you... Yeah.
She can play... No, sorry. Yes, never mind. Yes, that could be strong.
Okay, well, moving on then. I think we have had about enough of this combination. Let's talk about this week's challenge. Every week we're gonna challenge you, viewers and listeners, to make a deck, and we will post the best one on our Facebook page and on the Beken forum, and also talk about it on the next week's show. Well, as this is the first time we're going to do this, we don't have any deck to talk about, but we do have a challenge for you guys. And this week's challenge is a presence protein deck. What are your first thoughts about this, Adam?
Yeah, I think a really strong card from Protein is the Form of Mist, and Presence is already renowned for tap leading with Majesty and Mind Number. And with the Protein added, you can either choose to include Earth Melts instead of Majesties, or use Form of Mist for bleeding. So I think it's good for tap leading, this combination.
Okay. Isak?
When someone mentions Presence Protein, the first thing that pops up in my head is Axinia the Claw, the Gangrented Tribute from the girls deck, infamous for her bouncing capabilities.
What bouncing capabilities are that?
The Scarred Master card when you're untapped to bounce a bleed once each turn. But you probably could go with some combat, like a toolbox with Axinia. If you want to experiment, not only do like the basic tap bleed deck or stealth bleed deck, you could go both ways with Protein. But you could also go for some sort of combat with Protein and then use Presence for bleeding and defending yourself with Axinia and the Deng Tactics for some sort of toolbox. That's the first thing that pops up in my head.
Anyway, this is your guys' imagination that draw the lines on this one. So just send in your decks either to our Facebook or to our mail, and that is causeampersandeffect@gmail.com. You can see the mail at the bottom, I believe, Adam.
Yeah, this will be in the description of the YouTube clip.
Yeah, cool. Okay. To summarize, today we have talked about our week. We have talked about the deck Stickmen, different variations. We talked a little bit about Lilith's Blessing and the Becoming combo, and we have challenged you guys. Do you have any last thoughts, Isak?
I think I've been sounding more critical than I actually am of the Stickmen deck. It is a good deck.
Okay.
So I said it.
Okay. Adam?
No, I love this situation. I'm fine with how it is now.
Okay. That's good. Well, I have had a good time, and I would like to thank my co-host for having the time and opportunity to joining me and you guys that watching and discussing and coming with very good and intelligent input on our subjects. Okay, so good folks, that's it for this time. Thanks everyone for watching, and remember, if you have any thoughts, comments or ideas, you can post on our Facebook page, send an email to the address below, causeampersandeffect@gmail.com. And after the show, we will post a thread on the weekend.net address where you can continue the discussion. So thanks everyone for watching, and remember kids, every action has a reaction. This has been Cause and Effect, the first episode. Okay, goodbye everyone. Say goodbye people.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.